All right, thank you, everybody. Man, I'm super excited. Typically, when I have a team versus just me being solo in front of the camera, it's far more interesting. And so, one of the things I wanted to share with you all on my journey to creating the Touring Forge, I came up with a concept around Organization 5.0, slightly different than Industry 5.0, which is focused more on a macro view of business, and I'm going to focus more on the micro view of business, which means the individual business. What is it that the individual business needs to do to compete in this day and time? And so we came up with a framework called Organization 5.0. That Organization 5.0 framework is around how do you leverage advanced technologies, generative AI, advanced analytics, robotic process automation, natural language processing, machine learning, data science, big data, workflow automation, in a way that allows for you to achieve four core business objectives, usually four business objectives: increasing revenues, increasing capabilities, and driving efficiencies, ultimately to reduce operating costs, which increases profitability. So today, to help me further expand on that, we're going to focus on the science of cost intelligence. And I've brought with me the team from the ERA Group. And I want to go around the horn and be impactful, grab everybody's attention. So, Aaron, I'm calling you to the stage first. What are two things the audience should know about you right away?
Two things would be that I have a servant heart by nature, and I am a mom to two wonderful kiddos.
Beautiful, beautiful. Love the humanity side of it. Ed Flanagan, you're up next. Two things people should know about you.
I love to play golf, and I like to help companies save money.
Very nice, very nice. All right, so straight to business. Bree, two things people should know about you.
I love to travel and get to know different people, and I have two teenage boys.
Nice, nice. So for many may not know, we met before and it was so electric we had to do it again. Okay, Becky, bring us home. Two things people should know about you.
That I also have two amazing boys, and that I love to find the anomaly in anything that is presented to me.
Oh, perfect, perfect. Okay, so let's start off with this. Becky and Bree, you all actually have some connective tissue that goes far beyond just like working together at ERA Group. So I'm gonna put you back on the spot, Becky. How did you and Bree meet?
Okay, so I won't say how many years ago, but more than 20 years ago, I met Bree in grad school, actually. So we both actually were at UConn and getting our PhDs. And it was actually a very traumatic day. It was 9/11 that we actually met for the first time. And I needed to borrow her cell phone because she actually had it on her to call my sister who had just moved to New York City. And I think from that day forward, it was just sealed in fate. And then we found out as grad students, we were the only ones that still like to have the social component. So while we worked all day in the labs, we would then like to actually go out and hang out at night together. And we became fast friends. And fast forward 25 years, and we're still best friends and get to work together every day.
Beautiful, beautiful. Becky, I'm going to put you back on the spot. Bree, excuse me. Thank you, Becky. Bree, is there anything else they need to know about that? Because you seem to have a little bit more of a smile on your face. What you hiding behind the ear?
I think I would completely agree. I think that's how Becky and I met, and we love working together every day. It's a wonderful way to build a business on, it started with a huge foundation of trust amongst both of us. Our husbands are great friends, and both went through med school together. And so Becky and I knew what it was like to date med students at the time. And now here we are many years later, still working together every day.
Perfect, perfect. So Aaron, you're part of the team and you handle a broad set of responsibilities. What do you like about working with the team that's assembled here?
Well, as you'll get to know Becky and Bree a little bit more, they're incredibly intelligent and knowledgeable. Ed is super organized, like he shared. He loves helping his clients, and I think that comes through every day. We're super passionate about helping others. I share that I have a servant heart, and my background is in education, and being able to help others and also build connections are two things that are really important to me. And I've kind of been able to translate that over to my new career at ERA Group, which is really exciting.
Beautiful, beautiful. So our leader of the show, Ed, I want to start and kind of get right into it. Ed and I are building our relationship and he gets bottom line. So rather than take a general approach, I think we wanted to focus on the science of cost intelligence, but in a sector. And let's start with healthcare. So I'll start right off the bat. Tell me something that healthcare leaders should understand about approaches to cost management or cost intelligence.
the healthcare managers need to understand that there's opportunities out there to find additional savings over and above what their internal supply chain or procurement folks can generate. And we're able to help them because we've got broad experience. We have benchmark data. We understand the industry. And when we deal with the suppliers, we're able, in most cases, to find savings that equal about 20%.
Wow. So all things being equal, you all can come in and potentially increase profitability in certain categories by 20%, line by line. That's incredible. So I'll talk with the scientist, right? And so one of the things that we were talking about before we got to this point where we were jumping into this event was really around how do you explain and articulate it so it's not just narrowed down to cost savings, but more about cost intelligence. So Bree, I want to take a little bit of time to talk about what is cost intelligence? Is that a philosophical thing, or tell me a little bit about that?
Are you on mute?
You're on mute, Beck. All right, Bree might be having technical difficulty. I'll jump to you, Becky, right? Because you all have developed this approach together. Becky, let's pull back a second. Cost intelligence. Is it philosophical or is it analytical or is it both?
I would say it's both. It's combining the knowledge base of what you need to procure, but it's also looking at line item detail, but also understanding the holistic picture of your supply chain. So you can't just say, oh, this one widget should be X price. You need to look at it in the holistic, holistic aspect of what you're purchasing. And so the intelligence comes in being able to really be that bridge between what the clinicians need for their patients and what the C-suite wants to see in their financials on the bottom line. And Bree and I lend a really unique approach because we've been in the labs, we've been in the clinics. Like she says, we're married to physicians. We can bring in that holistic approach to the intelligence market, but then use our data analytics skills to dive into that line item detail of, you know, if we're looking at a spreadsheet of 100,000 lines, finding the ones that aren't aligned to be able to help our clients get the best pricing for those items.
So in that respect, what is the typical approach that you would take? And then I'll pass it back over to Bree to dive a little bit deeper. But where do you typically start, or how do you start? I think that's a better question. How do you start?
So the very first piece is to just understand where they are today. So we call it a baseline, which is just, you know, Bree and I will go and gather all of the information of what they purchased over the past year and putting it together through our lens to see what are they buying? Is it in alignment with industry standards? Is it feel like they're buying too many of a certain category or not enough of a certain product where we're like wondering, well, where are you sourcing this from if you're not getting it from this distributor? And so we start with a baseline, and then we go out and using our relationships with all of the different distributors and manufacturers, we help get our clients into alignment so that way their pricing can be improved. And then along the way, by being involved and staying on with them throughout this process, we also help them with the process change, helping them procure things at a more steady state so that their budgets can be a little bit more organized, and just really trying to help them achieve the savings and not just tell them, oh, you should do this and then disappearing. We actually stay on and make sure that it actually really happens.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to bring Bree back on stage. Bree, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can absolutely hear you. I love the way that you work through that technical difficulty. So I'll pass it back to you. So clearly you're a scientist and a technologist. So let's talk with the cost intelligence approach. So is it philosophical? Is it intellectual, or is it both? How do you balance the two?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of the two. I think there's an intellectual component. There's also a component where it's just after doing as many years as we've been in this business and doing it, we start to understand where to, which rocks to look under, if you will. This is all we do every day. We know our clients are wearing 10,000 different hats, and they have a lot of different tasks on their shoulders. Leave this task up to us. This is one that we can handle.
All righty, all righty. Aaron, so I know one of the things that you do very well is you help CEOs and CFOs kind of in the process of getting ready to engage. Talk a little bit about how you do that, right? So we've got the scientists who say, hey, we can come in and make this easy for you, but how do you help get that engagement going, if so to speak?
I think the first part is just, like you said, speaking with CEOs and CFOs that have that curiosity about their financial statements and knowing is there some pain points there? Are there different areas that they're curious about? Maybe they don't have the internal staff to dedicate time to, like Bree said, looking under those different rocks. And a lot of time, something that our clients really love about us is that we can free up extra time. So rather than having their staff pulled in all these different directions, if we can bring in specialists like Becky and Bree, and it kind of frees up time for their staff to focus on other tasks that are important to the organization.
Beautiful. Ed, from a running a team standpoint, and it seems to be a very team-oriented approach, why did you develop that philosophy versus just like a soloist in this particular case? What makes Bree and Becky and Aaron as a combination so effective?
Well, the nice thing, Chris, within our organization, we're able to specialize in 50 different expense areas. So in each area, we have specialists like Becky and Bree. They can help our clients in medical supplies, pharma, durable medical equipment, and other areas in that silo. And then we have another group of specialists that help our manufacturers. They help with the freight and the packaging. And then we can help in education. So we look at all different verticals, and everybody has expenses in telecom. Everybody has expenses in insurance, and we have people that are focused and specialists in those areas. So it's nice having, this wide variety of experts that can help any type of client out there.
So Becky, I'm going to pull a thread on here. You mentioned something that's kind of like a cheat code, right? So you and Bree both dated and married physicians. So you not only went through the medical process of understanding from a collegiate and academic perspective, but from a practitioner standpoint. What is an area that you centralize on and say, if I can look at this particular expense item, I'm definitely going to be able to deliver some savings?
Great question. So really, it's the supplies that don't touch the patient, that don't have that clinical dependency. So for example, like just general med supplies would be a phenomenal place that we can always save our clients money. If they want us to look at a specific knee implant for an orthopedic surgeon who's known their striker rep for 30 years and goes golfing with him every weekend, that's going to be a much harder sell to try to get him to change. So I would say most of the supplies that are kind of ancillary, aren't left inside the body type of products, we can absolutely always find savings. Bree and I specialize in the medical, dental, laboratory, pharma kind of space. So really any of those areas would be where we can find the most effective, alignment to get them the best cost savings.
Bree, where do you zero in?
To me, every group is unique, yet they have similarities. So again, it's so much about having the relationships across the entire country with all of the different suppliers and getting that initial data, finding out where they are today helps us to determine where we can ultimately find savings. Like Becky said, oftentimes we can find stuff in the general, everyday bandages and gauze type world where we can help find savings, pretty significant savings that maybe they don't have time to look at because again, they're busy focusing on staffing and other bigger fish to fry.
Understood. So, Aaron, you talked a bit about the curiosity, being curious, and for a CFO, I can imagine it being easier to be curious. But how does a leader develop this curiosity to want to find out where the savings lie in the organization?
Well, something that's great about our organization is one of our first meetings with a client. A lot of times we offer something called SpendView, and it's a software system that we use that collects information from the organization, their financials, and we plug it into different buckets. And it gives us a great idea to see where the opportunities might be. So like Becky mentioned, maybe there are certain categories that they don't want to look at, and that's fine because Ed shared we have 50 different categories. So for like a healthcare, Becky and Bree, they focus on med supplies and farm, but we have a ton of other expense categories that often get overlooked. Office supplies, linens, their waste. So by doing a spend view assessment, we get a really good idea of where we can kind of look under those rocks, where there might be opportunities, and generate savings from there.
Love it. Love it. So usually about the 15-minute mark, it's like our first quarter, right? So we're taking a break, taking a step back. And I want to reiterate why I'm so incredibly excited about SpendView. It is that when I looked at the 4 pillars of business, when you think about reducing operating costs, there needs to be a bit of an analysis, right? And so there's a set of people costs, there's a set of system costs, there's a set of technology costs, and then there's physical product costs. And when you have an organization that takes an advanced analytics view, so that's one thing that SpendView does, and does it in sort of a very frictionless way. When you get to analyzing data, right? So if you're on the technology side, you're talking about a significant uplift. You've got to create a data lake, or you've got to create, a warehouse somewhere where that data can be aggregated and shared. There's a big technical uplift. But one of the things I love about SpendView is there's not a lot of technical uplift. So I'll pass it back over to Ed. Ed, can you tell them a little bit about how SpendView is used and how you will engage the client to do that analysis?
Yes, the first step to get a SpendView analysis is for the client to send us a 12-month general ledger of all their expenses without salary, because we do not look at salary. We're not cutting heads. We're looking at all the other expenses. Once we get that data, we also ask them to send the data in a portal that's confidential. So their data will not be out on the internet. Once we get that data, it goes to our team of data scientists. They take that data and produce a report, which Aaron told us about, the SpendView. And what that does is it compares their expenses to other clients that we've had in the 32-year history, and what they spent in that area and what the savings were from their projects. And what it will do is it will generate and help us determine which areas we can focus on, and also project out a cash flow estimate of what the savings would be for the next 5 years.
I like that. Bree, healthcare. Let's talk a little bit deeper. So you probably had some incredible wins in your career. Is there one that kind of stands out to you where you were like, man, it was tough at first, but we ended up delivering big? Anything like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's been a lot of really fun projects. And to me, it's the projects where we get to build those relationships and we continue for a long time. So there's been a few projects where we've completed the project. We've done a great job. Maybe there were a couple bumps along the way at first, making sure that all the pricing was loaded as it was supposed to. And then maybe that CFO leaves and goes to a different company. And to me, some of those wins, and we've had this happen numerous times, is when that CFO calls us up from his new company and says, gosh, we loved what you did for us before. Can you please come into this next company and take a look at what we can do here to improve our bottom line? So I think that's an overall general view of what we've seen, but we've seen that happen. And that's always, to me, when it's very rewarding, because it means that they really trusted us. They trusted us to do a good job and to come in there and really help with their overall process.
To the partner. All right. So we got one from you. Is there a particular project, a particular type of win? Because I love the repetition of a CFO moving organizations, because that happens, right? So that's a hallmark of doing a good job. What for you? Anything stand out that were you like, this was a tough project, or I really delivered some incredible savings? Anything stand out?
I mean, my biggest standout would just be the very first time we saved money for our very first federally qualified health center, because they were so grateful. And this kind of ties into the servant heart that Aaron speaks of, which is when a client tells you, yes, you saved us X $100,000 towards our bottom line. But what really sold it for me was when they said, and now we'll be able to open up our behavioral health wing. And it made us realize that what we did went right back into the community to help their patients, to help their community be better. And now having, teenage kids and seeing kind of all of the mental health struggles that they go through, knowing that, yes, mom sits behind a computer and works on a spreadsheet, but where the final impact is that now there's a new behavioral health clinic available to the, families in that community. To me, that always strikes me as, you can't put a price on that.
Hold on. Did you say federally funded?
Federally qualified health centers. They're called FQHCs.
Do they receive federal funding? Can you kind of explain that a little bit for the audience that may not be familiar?
Sure, absolutely. So federally qualified health centers are different than a for-profit health center. So what they do is they serve the underserved communities in a lot of more urban areas. They do a lot of the school outreach as well. And so they are funded in part by the federal government in terms of, they do not charge for their visits to be able to see their patients. Most of their patients are indigent, homeless, places where, they can go to get proper health care. And so again, for us to be able to help that group in the nonprofit space put this cost savings into resources to further, improve their mission is, it's just very meaningful.
Okay, so I'm just going to tell you all right now, I see an incredible opportunity. I'm here to stay net neutral in this statement, but Doge is on the lookout. Right. And so if we're talking about any organization or institution that receives federal funding, they definitely want to be as efficient as possible with their spend. So I'm going to grab that now and pass it over to Ed. Ed, you've been in the business for a bit now. How easy is it for companies that qualify for federal funding like that nonprofit to engage the group?
To engage your group?
Yep.
I'm not sure, but Becky and Bree would know better. But I think we've worked with these organizations probably 30 or 40 throughout the country. Is that correct, ladies?
Yeah.
I think we're up to 65.
65.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I just engaged one about 6 months ago here in the Philadelphia area. And and as they're saying, they're very scared now because of all the things going on in the current administration. And we're right now kicking off 4 different projects to try to help them find additional cash flow to enhance their mission.
So, Aaron, how does somebody reach out if they hear this? If they're doing their Google search now for Era Group, like how do they get to the point where they get to the right team? Because Becky and Bree are the right team, along with yourself. How do they get to that team?
I was just going to say, we are the team, Chris. We're the right team. So reaching out to Ed Flanagan or myself, and then we would bring on specialists like Becky and Bree to help them. And the great thing about what we do is we don't cost anything. So we operate on a contingency basis, and we take on that risk for our clients. So we're pretty easy to refer and get started for clients.
So I'll just explain what it is from a business model standpoint. If nobody's familiar with why this is a powerful business model, you typically, if you engage somebody to analyze you're in the consulting space, you're talking about a retained model. And what a retained model is that you set aside a set of amount of budget. So think like hiring an attorney. And regardless of whether there are actual savings delivered, you're on the clock. So the amount of hours that they spend are the amount of hours that you bill. And then ultimately, if they identify some savings, great. But the company is billing in a retained model. The contingent model is quite a bit different. So Bree, can you tell a little bit about how the contingent model works?
Yeah. And it's one of the things I love about Era Group is that we work on a contingency base. So we come in, we can look at what you're purchasing today, and we can look for cost savings. And if we don't find any, there's no cost to you at all. If we do find savings, we share in a portion of that savings. So one of the things that's wonderful about this is that, and this does happen, we're able to go back to groups and say, you know what? You're best in class. You're doing everything you could do today. That purchasing person deserves 10 gold stars, right? They're the best of the best. And it gives companies a peace of mind to say, gosh, we're doing the right thing from a cost standpoint. Or, man, we can still continue to buy exactly what we're buying today, but save money where it can go back into to a better place.
Beautiful. Becky, from a laser focused standpoint, where in the market, you've talked about the federally qualified institutions. Is that the greatest place to start from a healthcare perspective? Or do you see other sectors that are like, when we look at this sector, we're typically able to save, somewhere between 20 to 40% net year over year?
We always joke that, healthcare is a really large umbrella. And so, we always say that there's kind of little silos even within that. And so obviously federal qualifieds is one silo, but long-term care, assisted living, whether you want it skilled nursing, there's so many names for that area within healthcare that has phenomenal, there's phenomenal savings to be found in these areas. Typically the groups are, depending upon where in the country, whether they're called step-up facilities or continuing care facilities, where the person comes in as an assisted living and they're playing bridge with their friends and going to, dinner parties all the way through to hospice. And so those groups are phenomenal to work with. We also love working with the, for-profit groups because they, always can benefit from cost savings. We joke about the ologists just because there's a lot more supplies in the practices that do things rather than talking. So for example, like a psychiatrist is a phenomenal physician, but they don't have a whole lot of supplies that we can negotiate. However, they do have all of the other ancillary categories in terms of their overhead, their payroll, their office supplies, telecom, all of those. So really the four major silos would be for-profit, federally qualified, skilled nursing, assisted living, elder care. And then the last one is the small regional hospitals. We typically work really great with independent hospitals that are trying to stay afloat and not get gobbled up by the Borg. If it's a huge hospital system, we can still help them. It's just a lot slower of a process because there's a lot of red tape and a lot of different pieces that need to come together. We've been successful with them, but where we really find that quick kind of being able to move the needle quickly is in that kind of small independent hospital.
Love it. Love it. So in terms of speed and process, Aaron, you talked about the ease of being able to engage and analyze through SpinView. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the process, right? The smooth process, not the highly bureaucratic, slowed down by a bunch of approvals. But when you have somebody who's intellectually curious that wants to engage, they've said, okay, yes, we're going to do the SpinView analysis. Around how much time does it take for them to realize, meaning they're presented with the information that they could be saving across categories?
Sure. So when we first get started, after they decide to engage with us, I think it was Becky talked a little bit about our baseline report. So we present this information back to them, kind of where they are today, what they're spending, how much they're purchasing, and we get an idea of what's important to them. So before we go out to the market, we want to get an idea of their quality and service requirements because even though we're looking for improved pricing, we don't want cheap. It's really important. And I know on our last call, Becky and Bree talked about this as well. We could get a cheaper price for gloves, but if the doctor, every time they're putting them on, they're ripping, then they're not going to be happy. So we want to make sure that we're really comparing apples to apples. And so that next stage when we go out to RFP is about 4 to 6 weeks. Once we sit down with the clients again and we have an idea of what direction they want to move in, again, it's really important for our clients to know that they're going to be making the ultimate decision. We are going to give our recommendations and certainly provide our input, but it's up to the client to decide. Do they want to switch a provider? Do they want to stay with their current provider? Maybe they don't offer as big of savings, but it's for our client to decide. And then Becky and Bree also mentioned that once they make a decision, we have another about 4 to 6 week chunk of time. We make sure that those prices are implemented properly in the system so that when our client starts to get billed, they're getting the improved pricing. And then lastly, we do something called an audit where they go line item by line item to make sure, are they actually getting charged the correct price? And if they're not, then, we contact the supplier and make sure that a credit is issued. But each little chunk of time is 4 to 6 weeks. So that can vary. But on average, our client realizes savings anywhere from like 3 to 6 months of when we first get engaged with them.
Love that. I love that. Now, the interesting thing and what I get a sense of is that you all come in as a supplementary team. I think one of the things that's often challenging, especially if you're managing profit and loss, is you have to balance priorities and you have a certain set of resources. And if you're proposing it in a way that's going to create work, additional work on top of all of the other work that has to be done, it can become a barrier. But from what I'm hearing is that the approach of Era Group is to come in a team model, and you're basically a supplementary team of high level, high functioning analysts. But I don't want to narrow it down there. Bree, take me a little bit deeper into that. How do you shepherd them across this, let's say 4 to 6 week on the way into the 3 to 6 month engagement?
Yeah, we really like to be an extension of their team. You hit it right on the head. We come in and we say, a lot of it's about getting to know their model. So tell us about your procurement team. Let's work with your procurement team, get to know your procurement team. Tell us about your reps that you work with. Do you like those reps? That's a big piece of this, right? Reps make a big difference. Tell us about the supplies you purchase. Tell us about how you overall function. How do you order supplies? All of those pieces are found out really upfront in the process when we do what we call a stakeholder call. But we really do from then on try to take the heavy lifting off of the shoulders of the company and put it onto our shoulders, right? We really spend that time getting to know them, getting to know their process, and then we go behind the scenes and gather all of the data, do all of the analysis that we can, and then come back to check in and make sure that it's done correctly, because there's nothing worse than us running with something that's not correct, right? So there are check-in points, but there might be, after, like Aaron said, after that 4 weeks, we present what we call our baseline report and say, gosh, does this look correct to you all? But then after that, again, we go behind the scenes and run from there. So it's really it's kind of a dance of using as little time, but as poignant time as possible.
So Ed, I think people may be wondering, I've never heard of Era Group, but I know the scope of the company sounds large, right? Because you're talking about baseline. Can you give people kind of a context as to how large of an organization, how vast you all are, and how many projects you've actually delivered?
Yeah, good question, Chris. So we've been in business for 32 years. We're headquartered in the United Kingdom, and we are now in 62 countries with over 1,000 associates. And the nice thing about the associates, we're all equity holders. So when I work with Becky and Bree, we don't get compensated at an hourly rate like you mentioned before, Chris. We don't get a retainer. We share in the savings. So we're implementation focused. So when we engage with the client and we work with our joint venture partners, they're geared to get to the savings. So they want to get the savings implemented as soon as possible. So we get paid and the clients get to share in those savings. So we're the largest consultancy of our kind in the world, Chris.
Love that. So I'll tell you, I did some research. Part of being a scientist, you have to do some type of research. And so the baselines and benchmarks that we're talking about are across 40,000 projects. And that's probably not the only container, but 40,000 executed projects to develop a deep understanding of those 50 categories. And we keep referencing those 50 categories. And really what it comes down to is the company pinpointed, these are the 50 categories you're likely overpaying for. I believe when I first met Ed, he talked about on average, right? You're looking at about 95% of the companies that they engage with across those 50 categories, they're going to be able to identify some savings. So I'm going to grab back one of my scientists, Becky. So we talked about quality, and this is one of the interesting dichotomies of cost savings, right? So some organizational philosophies that give me the deepest savings possible. Are there times where that runs into the quality factor where it's like, yes, I can get you the deepest savings, but it's going to have an impact downstream? And how do you manage that when they want to save the most money, but there's going to be an impact on the patient or the client experience or their overall operation?
Absolutely. And that's, we never want to sacrifice the value and the quality for a price. And so that's why it's so important that in each of these different cost categories that we talk of, that there is a deep industry understanding. And it's like, well, I love my 21-year-old son. We're not a whole bunch of interns that have never been out in the world doing this before. So each of the different categories that Ed would kind of quarterback as a team together are coming to the table with 30 years of experience of having like as Erin said, put on really bad gloves. And so we always kind of talk with the C-suite and we say, we're going to get you the deepest savings possible without having an angry mob of physicians at your door, because we don't want to have that any kind of tension or friction between the clinicians and the C-suite. So we work on exact like for like, exact match, manufacturer number to manufacturer number, NDC code to NDC code, to make sure that the clinicians get exactly what they need. Then we help work with them on finding, if the C-suite says to us, we need deeper savings, we really need to kind of grind a little bit harder. Then what we do is we work with bringing in alternate products that we know have been effective with our other clients. So we'll say, these other 20 groups are using this instrument and they find it very effective. Would you like to have us order you some samples so you can test it, see if it works for you as well, and then bring it in? And so we can really kind of, I love the analogy of the dance, which is we start with exact match to make sure that everyone's happy. And then we kind of slowly work on integrating and weaving in additional cost savings throughout our engagement to kind of drill down a little bit deeper. But because we can bring in the experience of what we're bringing to the table, as well as all of our other clients, we can know where it makes sense to bring in an alternate and where it is just like, look, guys, you're not going to like this. Like one of my favorite lines was, I put on a mask and it felt like someone put a piece of duct tape over my face. I'm like, you're not going to want to work in that all day. So we're not going to have you do that. And so we know where to kind of push and pull. And like Bree always says, what rocks to look under.
So we've referenced Bree. Bree, I'll bring you back on. Okay. So this is an interesting point where the impact of being a specialist or a niche-based focused expert allows for you to develop an understanding, as Becky just pointed out, that the mask feels like duct tape. Now, we'll all go back to our COVID-19 days. The first time we all wore, hopefully, some N95 masks, we had no idea it restricted our breathing like that. And these are the subtle idiosyncrasies of the market. So I'll ask you, I just got to take a step back. We just talked a lot of business. Why did you focus on this market? Why did you and Becky decide this is the market besides being married to physicians?
Right. It's a great question. So my PhD background, Becky's PhD background, we're both are scientists by training. So my PhD is in biochemistry and structural biology. So we understood what it's like to be in a lab setting, right? And there are a lot of overlap of products when we're talking there. Then on top, in addition, I grew up in a family of physicians. My parents are both physicians. My grandparents are both physicians on both sides of my family. And my husband's a physician. We eat, sleep, and breathe this world. We understand healthcare. It's just something that kind of came naturally to us to look into this world. And we really understood that oftentimes physicians and clinicians are really busy taking care of patients. They want, but going back to what Erin said, they have servant hearts. They want to do what's best for their clinicians or for their patients, and they don't have time to look at the cost of the goods they're using. There's just not enough hours in the day. So we said, gosh, we can marry those two things together. We have this background that we really understand, and then we know the need that's there.
I love this. So, Erin, I want to pull on, we first met, you made an interesting statement. I'll skip over this statement. I'll go straight to the impact. Being an educator, you talked a bit about the curiosity, right? And typically the most successful leaders are the most curious, right? We go all throughout history. How do you foster that curiosity? Is that something that draws you to working with the C-suite more directly? It seems like you're more on the business side. What do you love about that?
So I love, like I shared in the beginning, that servant heart. I love to build connections and help others. And like you said, having that curiosity and asking those questions that makes that deeper understanding and that deeper curiosity of, why do we purchase like that? Or why does that make the most sense? Or is there a better way? Can we be more effective? I mean, Becky and Bree also look at their buying patterns. And it's not just what they're purchasing, but how they're purchasing it. And is that what's best for the organization? So, looking at all of those different facets and asking the right questions, but also getting them to start asking those questions too. And looking at their organization internally to be able to ask those questions. And then like if they come to us and kind of, ask, I think it was Bree that mentioned it before, but having that really strong relationship a lot of times then they seek out members of our team, and they might be purchasing something and say, you know what, I better check with Air Group and see if this makes sense. Is this a good, even if we're not currently engaged with them, and giving them some feedback on their purchases.
So I'm going to go at the business level before I pass it back over to Becky. And you talked a bit about the equity, and really what that sounds like is that it seems like there's a very committed team across the organization, all 1,000 and all 62 companies, because it's set up in a way where the culture rewards for excellence. So can you tell me a little bit about, from a philosophical standpoint, how the Air Group fosters that continuous drive to deliver for the clients?
Well, the thing is, Chris, I spent over 20 years in corporate America, and if you had a good year, you would get a bonus. But then the following year would start out, and you'd have to start all over again. With the Air Group, when we help a client find savings, we share in those savings for 3 years. So we create an annuity. So if we get enough business and get enough annuities, we really have a nice work-life balance. And everybody loves, the model. We like helping our clients. We also like helping nonprofits. Nonprofits are getting beat up now. The federal government's cutting, the state's cutting the funding, and the IRS changed the tax code a couple of years ago where donations are not deductible anymore. So when we can help a nonprofit, we love being able to contribute to their mission.
Love that. Love that. Becky, let's pull on that thread. You got very mission minded. I actually felt it in my soul a bit as you talked about that, being able to help contribute to that build out of additional services for that federally qualified institution. Talk a little bit more about mission. Like where do you want to make the most impact in the market?
Good question. I think finding a way to partner with both the client and the supplier to create that sustainable, long-term relationship. We always talk about, we're not here to beat up on your suppliers. Everybody needs to have that long-term stability, trust relationship. And so in the market, I think where I would want to drive the most impact is in developing those deep relationships where people say, oh, you're the ones that we're getting to work with again with this new group, is kind of what is really important to us, because in order to be able to be sustainable in this business for as many years as we've done it, so Brie and I have been doing this for about 15 years now, we need to have that relationship with the suppliers as well, because they're the ones that are going to work with us to help achieve the greatest savings for our clients.
Relationship management. Brie, you're on one side of the table helping the client, and on the other side of the table, you have the suppliers. Mm-hmm. How have you all over your 15 years built relationships with suppliers where they can work with you and not such an acrimonious fashion?
Yeah, I actually always liken it to a triangle. We're working with the suppliers, the client, and us. And we are helping the suppliers. We're helping the suppliers to know what it is the clients need, what it is that the clients want. Does the client want their rep there every single day or once a year, right? Sometimes if they're in there asking their client that, they won't get an honest answer. But we can help. We can say, gosh, what is it that you need? And that just helps to smooth over the overall relationship between both groups. We can say, hey, Mr. Supplier, they're loving you for 90% of what you do. But this 10%, maybe it's that the delivery time is coming once every week and they need it twice a week. There's things like that, just with the communication piece, that we really help to build our relationship with the supplier as well, and really make them look good. Pricing is a perfect thing. Becky hit on this earlier. They are working with fewer and fewer people. They don't have enough time in the day to do their job. We check and make sure that every single line item is priced as they said it would be priced. And if we find an error, we reach out before the client knows. So they're getting credit before the client knows that they were deserved a credit. So all of those things help with building the relationship with the supplier, as well as keeping the relationship with the client.
Great. Fourth quarter, right? So we've made it here. We're in the fourth quarter of the show. It's closing time, right? This is when Michael Jordan made all his money, by the way. So you basketball fans, you know, in the fourth quarter, Michael would have like steam coming off his head because it was time to deliver the most impact. Okay. So what I'm gathering in terms of what I've heard so far, but one thing that just sticks out to me is the ability to take the savings and turn it into something else that drives, in this particular case, if it was a non-federally qualified organization and it was a for-profit, they could take those savings and create new revenue streams for the organization. And interestingly, in 2023, the average operating cost for a healthcare institution was $230 million. But the average revenue for the healthcare organization was $223 million. And so it becomes a business imperative that you begin to start analyzing your cost savings. So if you just do a 20% projection, what you're talking about is potentially $40 million. If it's 50 categories, we'll be conservative about it, and 20. Right. And so there's this extraordinary opportunity that Era Group, especially in the healthcare space, has to deliver impactful results. So I'm going to bring Ed back on. Ed, how does a healthcare organization engage Era Group today?
They can reach out to myself. My email address is eflanagan@eragroup.com. And I'm very good at getting back to anybody that reaches out to me. And we can have a discovery call to see if our services could be of value.
Staying with the contingent model, they're not being billed for that particular time, are they?
No. And also, we talked about the spend view analysis that we have. We can do the spend view analysis at no cost also. And that'll give them an idea of what areas we can focus on and potential for the savings over the next 5 years.
Nice. Aaron, C-suite executives typically have very little time to engage in process. How quickly do you deliver in terms of insight, results? How quickly can you get their attention so they know, okay, this is worth my precious time? How do you do that?
Well, I think, I'm not sure who mentioned it earlier, but we like to take on the lion's share of the work. So after that initial call to see if there might be opportunities for us to add value, I mean, we get moving right away. So we don't want to take up too much of their time. And, we're very honest with opportunities that might be available. So doing that spend view, we can turn that around quickly. Ed is able to present that to the clients usually a couple weeks after they're given us data. I think Ed, right, about 1 to 2 weeks after data is received, he's able to present a spend view analysis presentation. And then immediately after that, once the client gives us the go-ahead of what kind of categories they want to focus on to get started, we bring in our specialists like Becky and Bree and do that stakeholder call to talk about some of the, purchases that are being made and their service and quality requirements. So we get moving as quickly as possible.
I love that. I love that. Here's the interesting thing about your approach. One thing that I can hear being an initiative owner back in my corporate career is leadership. PricewaterhouseCoopers did a study of CEOs, and 77% of CEOs said leadership was the one skill that was lacking in the marketplace. But it feels like Era Group jumps right in from a leadership perspective and takes ownership of taking the initiative from, hey, I'm curious about this, to, oh, I could potentially save that, to how do we execute, to, okay, this is actually happening. So I'll bring Bree back on. Bree, from a leadership perspective, that ownership, the client feels at ease because Bree does what?
I think because we build a relationship with the client. We're able to come in and really understand and work with the client and understand where they stand. And then we can go through a process. We have a very systematic process that we go through. Ed would share it up front at the beginning, and we follow that process to the T, whether it's a healthcare project, whether it's an IT project, whoever it is that Ed brings in, we follow our 10-step process all the way through. So it's very transparent. We like to be very transparent so that, again, it's building that relationship with the client and that trust with the client and showing this is exactly what we say we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it.
Becky, the client loves working with you because Becky does what?
Um, Becky will do everything to meet their needs, whether it is the traditional engagement, whether it's the one-off, hey, Beck, Bree, we need to order a new autoclave. Ours just died. And Bree and I jump on it. We're in the market. We get them a quote the next day so that they can get it ordered by Friday so that their operatory isn't down for more than a day. We're always here. Like, this is our full-time job. We're not doing this in addition to other things. So they like working with us because we're always available to lend a hand and give them insight from all of our experience, and to just generally make sure that, like Bree said, everything is really easy for them to understand and customizable. So if they say, we really need to see a report this way versus that way, being scientists and research geeks, we can literally flip the data into whatever they need to see so that they can digest it in the way that's most beneficial to them.
Love it. I love it. All right, so I'm gonna give us the Brady Bunch view for those who have no idea what I'm talking about. Google that. For those who do, that's what we look like right now. I want to in this show being impactful. I like to land every show with the same way we started. Now that we've had an opportunity to educate the market and potential prospects of the business on the process, on the philosophy, on the ethos of the company, I want to jump in rapid fire fashion to close this out. Becky, I'll start with you. What are 2 things a potential client should know about what you do for them?
We bring a lot of experience and data to allow them visibility to better understand their purchases. And we bring a sense of reassurance and validation that they can't get internally.
Love it. Ed, 2 things that the market needs to understand about Era Group. Go.
Chris, I've been doing this for 16 years, and we have a couple objections to get started. One of them is timing. All of our clients are super busy. We realize that. So as what was mentioned earlier, we do the lion's share of the work. So we need access to get started. But once we get the data, once we find out what's important in each category, we're on our way. And we only need to meet with them for a short time to go through the baseline, the options report, and then the audit. The other thing is they're scared about their relationship with their current suppliers. They're thinking that we're going to mess things up. They're not going to get to go to the golf outing, the cocktail party, whatever the suppliers are giving them. And we're saying the suppliers aren't necessarily happy that we're involved, but we're open and honest. And we tell them, we look at your data and we see that you're overpriced in the market. If you sharpen your pencil, you can continue being the vendor for the client. And the interesting thing, Chris, is 2/3 of the time, the current supplier remains. So again, we're not trying to mess up that relationship, but if there is a margin out there, we're trying to make sure that money's back in the client's pocket and not the suppliers.
My servant leader, 2 things that Aaron delivers for the client.
Well, I was going to say that we as Era Group, we either bring good news or great news. And the good news is that maybe you're doing already a great job of getting the best pricing. So our good news is, hey, you're doing awesome. We can't help you. There's no fee for our service. Or great news, there's a little bit of opportunity here to find additional value, additional savings. And we have the right people, such as Becky and Bree, to come in and help you secure the best possible savings.
Bree, you are a cleanup hitter. If you know in baseball, you're in the home run. I got to get 2 things that the audience needs to know who are potential prospects that you want to deliver.
I think the biggest one is there's no risk to you. Reach out and just get a little bit more information. We can put together that great spend view analysis for you at no cost to you. And I think that's really it. I think everybody else has hit all of those pieces.
I set you up. You covered it. So you were the one who everybody is referencing that talked about the lion's share of the work. So here's what it boils down to. Era Group is really, really good at taking ownership of whether or not you're maximizing your profitability in a business in the healthcare sector. That's a bottom line. It doesn't have to get any more complicated than that. In terms of ease of engagement, the ability to do it in a contingent model, contingent upon the savings delivered. then what you really have to ask yourself as a leader in the healthcare space is, why haven't I reached out to Era Group yet? Reach out to E. Flanagan at eragroup.com, and he will start the process. I want to thank you all so very much for joining me today. This has been incredible. We did it once, and I felt the vibe, and so I had to bring everybody together so we could share. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and I'll have a good day.
Great. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank